with a very special guest, Joanne Knight. You want to say hello to everybody?
Hey, Corey. Hey, Diana.
Hey.
Hello, everybody out there in internet land.
And so tonight we are going to be bringing in the fourth installment of How Would You Quilt That? So How Would You Quilt That came about when Diana and I got questions after questions after questions of how people would want to quilt their quilt tops. They couldn't get past that little block. And I know you and I run into that as well sometimes. There's sometimes just that creativity block that you don't know where to take it after that or how you want to quilt that. So we decided, well, let's go ahead and bring that. Well, the first installment happened.
Right.
And then the second and third installment happened here at this retreat that we're at.
Right.
So we decided, why not we do it for the fourth time since we're here?
There you go.
Let's go ahead and do it. So as always, before we get started, make sure you subscribe to our channel. It's going to be right down at the bottom right-hand corner. After you click on that subscribe button, make sure you click on the little bell that shows up so you can get notified whenever we post new videos or whenever we go live at After Hours and on our new show, Friday mornings, Good Morning LEQ.
Yay!
Yay! And tonight we are also joined with a bunch of very special guests. Let me go and turn the camera around and everyone can say hello to everyone in internet land. Let's go ahead and say, there we go. We have a nice live audience. Woohoo!
Yeah, I love having a live audience. Super fun.
Nothing like having 70 of your closest friends show up.
That good moral support. Good moral support.
Exactly. Well, that, and most of these guys and a lot of the ones that tune in have customer quilts.
Yes.
And they get these customer quilts and they're not sure what to do with them and they get stumped. And so that's what I like about this segment is looking at the different ways, depending on whether you're going to put all over quilting on it or whether you're going to do something that's more custom. Custom is always going to be more work.
Always.
And a lot of times a quilt will ask for custom, but your customer doesn't want custom. They want an edge to edge, and it's really difficult to put that all over quilting on that quilt sometimes.
Right.
But the customer is always right.
Let's go with that.
Unless you can talk them out of
Unless you can talk them out of it.
And man, it's a whole new ballgame. All right, so what you got for us?
So let's go ahead and get this turned on. There we go.
Pretty.
There we go. All right, so the first quilt that we're looking at, this is a nice, simple chevron quilt. We see this a lot. You saw this in Skill Builders when you did a chevron quilt on this one. And looking at this, you've got a lot of 45-degree angles on this one with the chevron naturally. A lot of straight lines vertical on this one. So looking at it from a edge-to-edge standpoint, I was going through my patterns and I was trying to figure out exactly which one would look the best on this one. And one of the ones that I came about was the interlocking lines, random.
Right.
And this one's by Linda V. Taylor. And I love the way that, and we talked about this, the way the lines, these horizontal lines, break up those 45-degree ones.
Well, it's a different width.
Right.
And because it's a different width, you've got, in this particular quilt, you've got piecing that goes both vertically and horizontally.
Right.
Because it's really easy to say, don't fight with the piecing when you choose the pattern. But in this case, if you're going to do something like this and be something modern, then instead of fighting with that horizontal piecing, if you just size that a little bit smaller, you don't have to worry about hitting those seam lines. Start out hitting those seam lines and then have to fight that thing going all the way down.
Yeah, it'd be a nightmare at that point.
It would. But I love the look of this because the quilt kind of reads kind of modern to me.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that it's got that little bit of split, and this pattern quilts out really fast.
Very, very fast.
Yeah.
And on this one, even if you wanted to do this, if you didn't have the pantograph, you wanted to do this, free motion or with your machine, you could change, like you said, the different widths of those lines of spacing between them, and no one would ever know.
Absolutely.
It looks like it'd be intentional to do that. You could move it around however you wanted it to nest properly.
Right.
Which is great.
And I'd be doing a lot of that moving if I were doing that freehand.
Oh, yeah, of course. So the next one that I went with on this exact same quilt, if you wanted to keep it a little bit more traditional, in the fabrics of this, I saw a lot of flowers in the color part of the fabric there. I saw movement with the chevron. So the next one on this one that I really liked was the Riplets and Flowers, E to E, and this one's by Joyce Lendergan.
Right.
And one of these, the pattern like this is what they considered a modern pattern.
Yes.
So you want to explain the definition of that?
Well, it's a linear pattern. What designers do is they design these patterns and they design them really long because they don't know what width the quilt is going to be.
Right.
What I like about this one in these modern linear patterns is they're going to quilt really fast.
Yes.
Okay. If you have a computerized system, they're going to usually quilt to the left and then turn back around and quilt back to the right. And to me, that controls shrinkage better.
Right.
Whenever you're doing that. With something like this one, it's not diamonds on top of diamonds where you have to line everything up.
It doesn't have to be
you
exactly
have,
perfect.
you have that little bit of shrinkage.
Right.
And because of the left and right, that's going to be able to control some of that.
Right.
And it's going to fit your quilt because it's flower. You pick up on the fabric. You also have to stop and think about who's the quilt for.
Exactly. Yeah. No, if this was going to be for somebody else, say maybe a gentleman of some sort, he might not want flowers on there. So you could take it a
Right.
different way, maybe go in with those curves and maybe some circles
Right.
to break up the straight lines as opposed to flowers.
Right.
On this one too, maybe let's talk about thread color as well. When you're working with something like this, what is your idea of something that would look cool?
Well, the thing about this one is you've got a lot of negative space.
Yes.
So I would not go with a white thread
Right.
on it because what's going to happen is the design is going to show up in the pieced part, but then you're going to lose it in the
That
white
negative space,
space.
it's
And
always
so you're going to have a
disappears.
half a flower.
Right.
And that would drive me nuts. Okay.
Or a little OCD.
So since it's a little bit more modern looking or has all that negative space in it, maybe a gray.
A gray would look nice. I was also thinking maybe if you want to take it kind of that variegated route, going with a nice pastel
Yeah.
variegated. It has a lot of those light colors in that piecing.
Yeah.
So you could take up that pale pink, that baby blue, some pale
Pale
yellows.
Yeah.
And that would look really, really nice. Would kind of bring it all together. You would see it in that negative space, but you'd also
Yeah.
see it in that piece chevron section as well.
Well, there's
One-
that old trick, Diana, and I'm sure you've heard of that, where you take the keyhole and you go to one of the hardware stores or something and you buy one of those keyholes that goes in the front door and you look through the keyhole.
Yep.
I'm not kidding. You are not old enough to know what I'm talking about. You take one of those little keyholes. They're usually gold.
Okay.
You take one of those little keyholes and you look through that keyhole and you're able to see that quilt, and you would be able to pick up what colors are reading through that quilt, which would help you pick up thread colors.
Okay. I just learned something new.
Well, there you go.
The more you know. Mom, what comments were you going to make about this one?
No, I see bone glide.
Yeah.
It would pull all those colors, but yet it's settled softly on top of the colors, but yet be a very soft flower
Yeah.
or soft whatever. So that was just my suggestion on this one.
Yeah,
Definitely.
go a couple of shades darker than what the background is.
Yeah.
And then that way it doesn't fight with the background and you can still see it on both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like
What's
that.
that?
So on this one as well, I wanted to take into account maybe if you wanted to take it onto a free motion standpoint.
That
So
would be you.
that would be me.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to take that into a free motion standpoint, you could, in this negative space, for instance, let's start over here. Say we want to start over here in this section. We could come in and do some horizontal lines, doesn't matter what the distance is on this, using the ditch of this piece fabric between the negative space as your continuous stitching. You could go this way with it. As you get up in this section here, travel down this side to use your stitch in the ditch there, and then you could take that back. And the great thing about this is it doesn't really necessarily matter where that, if these are perfectly spaced apart.
No.
You want to have that nice little distance in there to give the eye a little bit of interest on this quilt when you're looking around and seeing what's going on with it. So that could do that negative space part. You could also take this, let's say if we're starting all the way on the right-hand side, you could begin to draw your vein all the way through this right-hand side. And you could then on the way back come in with feathers
Yeah, that's where I
to
was
soften this
going.
up.
And what what helps with this is you've got the feathers in the piece part, you've got the more geometric in the negative space. If you put feathers in both of those,
Right.
then you just as well put an all over on
You
it.
might
You
as well
just
do an
as well
edge to
put an edge to edge on it, because you've gone to all that work and they both look the same.
Right.
So there has to be some difference there.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
at that point, it ends up looking, like you said, an overall, or it ends up looking like a whole cloth.
Exactly.
And you wanted to give it a little bit of difference
Yeah.
in that section there.
Yeah.
So definitely going in between those, you can go in with some fun freehand to accomplish that. Okay, next quilt on this one is this really cute Christmas quilt. Snow Time's got a lot of different ideas in there. First thing I see, of course, when I see snow in the fabric is, of course, a snow pattern.
Right.
So Here Come the Snowflakes by Rose Claire Fletcher. This is a really cute pattern. It looks super complicated, but it quilts out super fast. And the best thing about snowflakes is each and every one of them are unique. So it doesn't matter if you follow this to the T,
Right.
because you can use the idea that it's a design choice, that not all of them are perfect.
Right.
Because they're all going to be a little bit different in this standpoint. Gives a little bit of interest on this one. In this actual particular quilt, if I was going in with a thread color bone from the Glide line, would look really, really well. It's a nice pale kind of blush color, or you could go in even with a white or like a cool gray. What do you think?
I like a pale blue.
A pale blue would look good too.
Pale
Yeah.
blue would draw it all together.
Right.
Now, are these panels, the piecing on this, you've got the piecing and the triangles that go around that one block, and
Right.
then you've got the piecing over here. So with that snowflake pattern, you're going to have curves that are going to soften, and you can bypass some of that piecing if you want to.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that way, if she really is not the piecing queen, and she has some issues,
Right.
then this is going to soften it up a little bit and
Right.
help with that,
Kinda
and be
work
able
through
to
that.
camouflage some of that piecing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mom, what do you think?
Well, I was thinking if for thread wise, I would probably do a light variegated blue so the snowflakes changed colors.
Yeah, that'd be cute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be really cute.
Yeah, or a like a silver metallic,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so that you've got kind of the sparkle from the snowflakes, which would be pretty.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that look nice. On this one, we didn't really come with a full-on hardcore custom idea because there's so much going on this quilt. You would drive yourself crazy trying to figure out exactly how you're going to custom quilt every single one of these pieces without taking away from
Right.
everything going on the quilt top. You've got words on here. You've got pictures of snowmen on this. You've got different scenes within this, where if you threw quilting on every single one of those, you would lose the whole quilt top in general.
Well, and the way that the sashing is on this particular
Yes.
one, it makes the blocks look like they're different sizes. And so if the blocks look like they're different sizes, then you've got sashing that is on this level, and then sashing is on this level. So it's not a straight sashing that you can run across. You've got to go up here and then come down here.
Right, which might throw off the way you're looking at the quilt. And then
Right.
once you quilt it, you're like, oh, snap, I got to pull out the seam ripper
Right.
because it's not exactly where I needed it to be.
Well, and you've also got a sashing, although I love it, you've got a sashing that is a stripe.
Yes.
And so that puts a whole nother dimension in there.
Right.
So yeah, it's a custom on this. It's not going to show up very much.
No, I'd go in with just some snowflakes and call it a day.
Call it a day. Yep.
Next one that you really like.
Love this one.
Love this quilt.
Love this
This
quilt.
is really pretty. On this one, love the colors in this, the blacks, the grays, the reds. Looking at this from a edge to edge standpoint, looking at the way this quilt top, the piecing in it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. The first thought that my eye went to would be Modern Eccentric
Yep.
by Anita Shackelford.
Right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love the movement
Yep.
of this, and it works very well with
Yep.
the quilt top. Love the idea of the way this one just moves properly.
It does the same thing again. It breaks up all of those sharp lines.
Right.
Because it's got that movement in there. I have seen this one done both nested close together,
Mhm.
but I have also seen it done with a double bat and leaving about a 1/4 inch between the rows.
Right.
And it just makes this kind of wave look going across there. Really, really pretty
Puffs
when you
up
do
really
it.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really pretty when you do it that way.
So if you didn't want to go with lines on this one, even though they're curvy because you're afraid that that might work with the lines and the piecing,
Right.
I would go in with some circles to mimic the circles that were in that broken border.
Yeah.
So this one by Linda V. Taylor, Bubbles and Baubles, has a little bit of the echo on this circle, breaks up all those 45s and all those straight lines and works really, really well to bring this quilt together. And you'll see on the right side there of that quilt, that's part of that broken border, all those little circle pieces that travel up the right side and down the bottom left.
And the circles are different sizes.
Yes.
So that helps you because the circles are different sizes. Don't size them too big.
Right.
Because you don't want to size them so big that the quilt is not going to lay flat because it's got a lot of piecing going on. You don't want to have them be a 1/4 inch, but you don't want to size them so big that you can put like your whole hand in there and not touch any, quilting.
Yeah. So looking at that, I guess before we go, Mom, did you have any suggestions on this one? Okay. What about thread color? Give me your ideas on thread color for this one.
Well, I'm thinking cool gray 3.
Okay. So out of the glide line, the cool gray 3, together really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so like a gray.
A gray would be nice to pull those together.
Red's too harsh.
It would disappear on those darker colors.
Yeah, red is too harsh.
It wouldn't pop in properly.
Yep.
And if you went with like a black and white variegated, it would disappear too.
Yeah.
So going in with maybe a cool gray 3, which is a different kind of a blue gray, it ends up giving it a different look altogether. So on that quilt, if you were going in with maybe a free motion standpoint on this, I would load this quilt sideways.
Yes.
If I was doing anything free motion with this one.
Yep.
Just to work with those borders and those sashings a little bit more. So let's turn this sideways. And you had a great suggestion for the border. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, you would do something in the chevrons, in the piecing that is going to be curved because you can break those up.
Right.
But in the borders, I'm a real sucker for piano keys. And you would do piano keys that are only in an L shape, only in the corners of it, because you could do those piano keys in the corners, but then come back with something circular over those circular pieces that are pieced. Because this customer, went to a lot of trouble to put those designs and piece that border. I don't think that I would necessarily like just doing one border corner and running it all over the whole thing. Because if you do that and run it all over the whole thing, you haven't honored you haven't honored the piecing that they went to do that.
Right. So I mean, if you wanted to, since you have these orange peel shapes, you could go in and kind of separate the way these arcs work. So the natural arc of it is right here. That's the natural piece.
Yeah.
But if you went in, you could even crisscross the arcs where you do like this way here, that way there. Kind of gives it a smaller orange peel design on the inside of that.
Well, okay. And if you look at it, depending on how much money you want to spend and how much time you want to spend,
right,
that's a double wedding ring.
Right in here.
Right in there. And then that's the melons for the double wedding ring. So if you've got a computerized system that will do point to point, then you're just going to go click, and then go back the other way. And you've made really fast work of that. Right.
And something like this, like we carry full line stencils that are used with powder. So you can pounce them down, and they have double wedding ring ones where you could place that design in there, pounce it down, and quilt right over it and call it done.
Yep.
If you wanted to take it from a free motion standpoint.
Yeah. And then that would be a really nice look with those straight line piano keys.
Right. And then you got the curvy lines in the middle quilt, and it kind of brings it all together.
The density matches.
Correct. Yeah.
You've got to make sure that density matches. Size those piano keys or size those curvy lines in the middle to where all of your density is going to match, because if it doesn't, then you're going to be able to spot that.
Especially if you're doing something like in those melon parts and inside the inner part of that double wedding ring, for instance, if you go with something super dense in there, those corners are going to sit differently, and they're going to be way too thick. And that's the first thing your eye is going to go see, as opposed to the rest of the quilt. Yeah. So you definitely want to make sure all that balances out nicely.
Yeah, because that's not a very wide border.
No, not at all.
You don't want to put a feather in there. No, thank you. No, doesn't call for that.
Right. Okay. So next quilt is a listed basket quilt. Love this quilt. Really, really pretty on this. And you made a great comment on this one, that these fabrics in this quilt, the way the piecer meant to put it was they love traditional fabrics.
Yeah.
This is kind of, these older prints, some of them look a little Civil War.
Civil War.
And the only thing, in my opinion, and in both of our opinions, that would make this pop the correct way is if you went in with a beautiful Baptist fan.
Yeah.
And call it done
Yeah.
on that. Make sure the Baptist fan pattern that you choose goes in the direction of those baskets. You see how they're kind of going up to that top right section? Make sure that Baptist fan follows that and doesn't go against it.
Right.
Because then at that point you're seeing the pattern is messing with how the quilt top looks.
Well, quilting is supposed to always complement.
Right.
It depends on whether you want to see the piecing or whether you want to see the quilting, and this is just going to give it texture.
Right.
It's going to give it that little bit of extra. This customer obviously likes that era of fabrics and those types of fabrics and those colors. I know there was a big craze about pink and brown.
Mm-hmm.
I have a whole box of pink and brown. But that, so that Baptist fan is perfect to be able to put on that and follow that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on
these
this one,
might be little blocks.
yes, yeah, definitely having those little blocks in there.
Yeah, these
Way
are
to
probably
put
not 12-inch baskets.
Oh, no question.
No.
No, definitely by judging by the size of that picture that I looked for.
Yeah.
Those are probably 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah.
They're really small, so you don't want to go anything super tight.
Now, what you do want to do when you size this, don't size your Baptist fan to the same height as the block.
Right.
Because if you size the Baptist fan to the same height as the block, then you're going to be able to see those seam lines between those rows. You need it to cross over.
And if one of those rows is not the correct size, and
Exactly.
that row doesn't hit it, the customer's going to know automatically that
Yeah.
6 of these were right and the last 7 were incorrect.
You're
That's
going to be
gonna drive you
working
crazy.
really hard to make that match up all the way down. So
Right.
you split the difference to begin with, and you're going to work a whole lot less being able to match
Working
that
through it,
up. So you never want, or I never want to size a pattern the same size as what my quilt block is.
Especially because it's going to be too much work to try and keep it
Yes.
together all the way down. Mom, what do you think?
I like it. I was just thinking we have a full line stencil that is Baptist fan for somebody that wants to do a Baptist fan, hand guided. They could, pounce that on and be able to get the same look.
Right.
I was thinking like a very thinner thread, but yet maybe
Yeah.
like mauve, like a really, really light mauve or rose, but thin. So
Yeah.
it still pulled the colors together, but yet it didn't take over any of the piecing.
Possibly using a bottom line for quilting.
Something like that.
And a thicker bat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the quilts, what this reminds me of is those big, thick, fluffy quilts that your grandmother made. So if it's a thicker bat, then it's going to give a little bit more a little bit more fluff to it.
Yes.
Okay, and rather than just a thin one. So yeah, I think so.
Working through that. So if you want to take this more from a free motion standpoint as well, you made a wonderful suggestion. There you go. That's
Okay.
the word. That looking at how this is pieced, it's basically pieced in 4 patches.
Yeah,
If you see how these colors are built together here, it's all built in a 4 patch
Yeah.
all the way around this. So from a faster quilting standpoint, if you wanted to, in these open block sections here, if you wanted to do continuous curve
Yeah.
to kind of work more with the time period, you could keep that working continuous through those. So you're starting here, around, drop through here, over, down, there. You got those quilted out. So now, granted, you could
Yeah.
go through that whole entire part of that quilt and bounce this way all between every single one
Yeah.
of these open spots and get all that done super fast doing continuous curve.
yeah,
All the way
and
through.
because to me, I don't know how big these are, but they look like they're small. And because they're small, you just need just that little bit of something in there, just something real simple to be able to do that and have those baskets stand out.
Definitely. It's going to place something in these open sections, not too much to take away from those baskets
Right.
either. And then on this one, depending on the size of the basket and how much either your customer's paying or how much you want to put into it for yourself, you could do stitch in the ditch around these baskets, of course, depending on the size of them. and then you could come in and do some type of background fill.
Yeah.
If you wanted to even put in a crosshatch and a background fill to kind of make those baskets definitely pop. Because you do that tighter quilting with that thicker batting that you suggested, that section will then look like trapunto and pop that basket in every single one of those places.
Yeah. I think, Diana, don't you think a clamshell pattern would look good on that quilt as well?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty on that because clamshell is kind of that kind of time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, good ideas.
Last but not least,
what else you got?
I got this. They call it a honeycomb quilt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the one that you send to somebody else. Let them quilt it.
Let them figure that one out.
Just let somebody else do that.
On this one, what I saw is you would work yourself to death custom quilting this.
That's why you send it
That's
to
why
somebody
you send it
else.
to somebody else.
Exactly.
Now, if the customer wanted, or if you wanted it custom quilted, you could do that, and I'll show you a way. However, throwing something over this, a nice edge to edge, something feathery, something more traditional to go with the time period of these fabrics, and not necessarily with the piecing, but the time period of the fabrics.
Right.
You could go in with feather meandering. This is a good one by Linda Taylor. Works very well with these pieces. With certain sections, you can see in there that it looks like certain parts of that pattern were built for certain pieces of the piecing. Just the way that it is. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely softens it up all the way through there. Now, if you wanted to take the brave route and custom quilt it, which you would want to do freehand, of course you would. That's what you would want to do. Yeah. You could. And looking at this and breaking these down, you could come in with this section. Let me lower my pencil. There we go. And you could come in and see if you wanted to maybe do some type of feather wreath in here, or start kind of in the center right here of this little section and kind of build a little peacock feather. Go do a little stitch in the ditch. Yeah. And then build on that. A little bit of stitch in the ditch. Build on that. And work around this section just like so, all the way around. And then once you get to that centerpiece, because you're stopping right here, you're stopping right there. Once you get to that centerpiece, to break up those straight lines and to go with the curve of this little peacock feather, come into the center and swirl it back out again, and finish off your stitch in the ditch. Yeah.
Love it. That looks good. I like that idea.
Thank you. what do y'all think?
How many honeycombs are there?
There you go. That's exactly where my headspace was
How many
going.
honeycombs are there?
When you do something like that,
you better be prepared.
You better be ready, okay? And understand that when you start that, you got to go all the way to the bottom of that quilt. You can't just put a big teddy bear or something down. You're gonna do one honeycomb that way, you better do all 99 of them that way.
So I'm gonna call you over. You can do it. In the blank space? Good question. So what would I do
Nothing,
in the blank space?
because we're tired of honeycombs. Just that's it.
You could go in with this one, since you do have a lot of straight lines, you could go in with a continuous curve. It would be a ton of continuous curve movement. But you could go in with something like that. You could drop those. What am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say. We have the same brain sometimes.
Okay, I'll get there in a minute.
Yeah. There's something else you could drop in there.
You could have find a pantograph or something too, or an edge to edge that has that same theory, like this design you did, and then add like a curve or swirl or something to it, and then just do an offset overall with that, and that would pull those all together as well, right?
You could put an M. If you went here to this corner, up to this corner, to this corner, and then come back
to here.
To
where? To there?
Did I stump you for the first time?
Yeah. Now I got to do it because we're on internet TV.
Yeah, and that way would make an X, and it wouldn't fight with what you've done.
Which corner you want to go here?
No, this one.
Have to give you the pen.
Go there.
And that here.
Go up.
I see. And then you want me to go this way?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
To create a little diamond effect at that point.
And
You're
do
so
that,
smart.
and that would be a chain that goes all the way through that wouldn't fight with this. You just have to find where your path is.
Right, figure out which way you can take
Yeah.
it to make it keep it continuous, to
Yeah.
keep that machine moving,
Yeah,
if you
because,
wanted to take that.
because there again, those are small pieces.
Right,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Cool. I like that.
Cool.
All right. So she said, all right, do it.
Expect it to be done tomorrow morning.
All righty. Okay, well, thank you all so much for being with us this evening and looking at how you would quilt that. Thank you all so much, Bells, for being our audience this evening. Thank you. Joanne, thank you for joining me as always. I love it when you're on the internet TV because you love it. And Mom, thank you for joining me as well, all the way at home in Texas.
Good to see you, Diana.
Good to see you too.
Alrighty, all of you. Well, we will see you tomorrow morning on Good Morning LQ at 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.